you have 5 or 6 conversations with somebody, several meetings with them, and they haven't purchased from you, it's okay to ask them for that sale, right? How come you haven't bought anything from us yet? We talk all the time, and it still is business at the end of the day. And it's nice to have, you want to have these relationships. Like I have some very close friends in this industry who are customers of mine now. And I value those a ton. From a pretty large, I would call it like a broker distributor work with, good friend of mine, probably at my wedding, when I get married. And that's really cool to me. But also I don't want friends. I also want, we want partners, we want customers. So it's okay to push for that.
Welcome to Winning at Work, the podcast for foodies, founders, and food and beverage professionals. If you wanted to discover a new brand, a new food or beverage to try, there are literally thousands of companies out there. It is very difficult to do that. That's why we curate the different, the better, and the special brands here each and every week, so you don't have to do the heavy lifting. If you're a founder and you're looking to connect with other like-minded executives, we make that very easy. And if you just work in the food and beverage industry and you're looking for fresh inspiration, we have that here in spades.
This episode is sponsored by Temple. Congratulations, you're selling in retail. But the competition is fierce and your brand is surrounded by similar products. How will consumers find you? Let Temple show you an innovative retail sales solution. Click on the Attract Consumers link below. Need to attract great employees? Click on the Hire Now below and we'll show you how to use your culture to help you stand out. Stay tuned for this week's episode.
Welcome to Winning at Work, everybody. It is a horrible time to be having food conversations, especially like delicious food conversations on an empty stomach. But here I go again, having another challenging moment. I've got to talk about one of the most delicious pieces of seafood on the market, and that is lobster. Kind of a funny story. Adam Laite and we started this conversation about 2 years ago, but the lobster market has been so crazy, so chaotic. Our schedules have taken us in two completely opposite directions. So I am really, really excited that today, finally 2 years in the making, I am going to get to expose everybody to the story of Luke's Lobster. I can't wait to learn all that there is to know about lobster harvesting and the marketplace for lobsters. A little bit of backstory on Luke's Lobster. Yes, it's been around for about 13 years. It does have an origin story. We're probably not going to spend too much time on that, but I can tell you they've got 22 shacks. I love that you guys call them shacks. 22 shacks in 10 states around the U.S. Currently, you've got locations in Japan and Singapore. You do have a branded grocery retail line. You've got about 1,000 retail placements. Because you are dealing with a frozen product, you do have some DTC. You do have an online business. They are a certified B Corporation, which is fantastic because you're putting purpose before profit. We'll probably touch on that a little bit. In terms of like market trends, data trends, Luke's Lobster represents 31% of all frozen lobster sales sold in the U.S. That's incredible. That's mind-blowing that you've got that much market share. In terms of CPG rankings, the number one top-selling frozen lobster product or products in the U.S. We could just go on and on and on. You're also in wholesale. Finally, I get the head of sales for Luke's Lobster, Adam. Welcome into the program, my man.
Tony, thanks very much for having me. It's been a long road to get here, but I'm definitely happy to be here.
Well, we finally got you off the ships. I guess you were just covered head to toe in I don't know, lobster wear.
Yeah, I think sometimes I wish I could say I do a little more of the grunt work, but I'm definitely more behind the scenes than our frontline guys.
Well, you've been out on the boat. You had to have been out on the boats. You've had to have gone out and seen the actual harvesting, right? You got to wear like the little funny hat and the
For sure. So, quick story around that. I'm from originally from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, and now one of the co-ops we work with during the spring season is called the Cayley Co-op. This is located in Port Hood, Nova Scotia, on Cape Breton Island. And I did do a few days of lobster fishing when I was just out of high school. Like, I'll be home from the summers. I played hockey in the winters, and I'd be home for the summers. And I worked as a help a little bit. Did a couple days and found out pretty quickly that I get pretty seasick.
Turned
it
green in the gills, did you?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not built for. I love lobster. I do love the industry. I wasn't built for. I wasn't built for the hands-on piece. I was definitely more. I was more built for helping the product get to its end destination.
There you go. You're the onshore side of the operation. Well,
exactly.
So I'm just kind of curious. When we talk about just the lobster market in itself, I mean, how do you even determine market value for lobster or different seafood products? It seems such a moving target. I would imagine that's very difficult with pricing.
When we look at market pricing, it's I feel like it's more supply and demand driven than anything else. Supply and demand and competition. It is a limited resource. There's only so much. If you're working directly with a fisherman's co-op, you're buying all their catch. If you're taking, like we do from several of our co-ops, whether it's in Atlantic Canada or here in Maine, we're buying all the lobster they catch. So if we can't process it all, we still have to buy it. Because we're committed to those fishermen. We're committed to that wharf. There's a really wide array of lobster buyers. For us, we're a vertically integrated seafood company where we have, we're working directly with co-ops. We're processing the products ourselves. We're then sending the products either to ourselves, with the lobster meat to our own restaurants, or we're making, packaged goods for restaurants or selling them, wholesale and to third-party customers. And then you have live lobster companies that are just taking in live lobster and shipping it. They're shipping it overseas or they're selling it domestically in supermarkets. And then you have, go down further down the chain, like just middlemen that are just, tacking their 5 or 10 cents on when they have a sale. So it's honestly like a moving target. Like just even look at this last week, leading up to the 4th of July, the price, kicked up pretty good as the 4th is a pretty good lobster holiday. And then, now that we've gotten past it, around Wednesday, Thursday last week, the price dropped 50 cents, 75 cents. So it can be timing. It can be who needs lobster when, and you got to kind of be competing with that market price to keep your buys.
You mentioned there's great times for, cooking and grilling lobster. In general, what is the ideal lobster season for harvesting? When do you guys go out and feel like this is our sweet spot?
For us being on the processing side, typically the best month for us is June. And during this spring season, we work directly with that Cayley Co-op, as I mentioned, in Cape Breton, and we work with another one up in the Gaspé in New Brunswick and Quebec. And typically the Canadian lobster is a little it's the same lobsters we catch down here, but just where their waters are a little colder, you do get a little fuller shell. So we do get like a really robust lobster meat shell. So it just yields more. You're getting more meat picked out of those claws. So typically in June, we're running that harder shell lobster. For us as a processor, that's kind of the ideal time to be, whether it's producing a super high quality product or it's a better opportunity to make money as well, just because you're getting more out of that lobster. The main season kicks on right about now, like, around the middle of July typically. And it usually takes a little bit for things to kind of kind of like, I guess you kind of ride out that like first few catches and where prices are at, how the catch is looking. But usually by like the end of July and then like through September is a pretty nice, consistent spot for the main season to be kind of just like hitting it every day.
I guess when it comes to like lobster populations and behavior, have you noticed any changes over the past couple of years?
You do get years that are up and down. Like this year, the catch was down in most areas in Atlantic Canada. But when you look over like a longer period, like you look over 10 years, you're kind of like riding the wave, riding the roller coaster, and you're pretty much staying even in catches. The one thing we have seen with some warming waters is like there used to be a lobster fishery in New Jersey that was pretty good that doesn't exist anymore, essentially. And Massachusetts used to be a pretty big, obviously far before my time, but used to be a pretty big lobster catch area. And now we work with some crab boats in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and we'll buy their lobster during the summer. And we really don't get a whole lot from there because they just don't catch a whole lot. So the catch has stayed, like on one side you say, stayed pretty consistent, but there is no two ways around it. They have been migrating north.
They are migrating north. Is that to the colder water, you think? Is that what the theories are right now?
Yeah, it's the theories are, and it's you are kind of throwing darts a little bit, but it feels like at some point, Newfoundland will probably have a very large lobster population.
So tell us about these shacks. So I love the fact that they're called shacks, by the way. That's got kind of a Cape Cod feel, you're not taking yourself too serious. I kind of like the name. Yeah,
I would say we keep it pretty casual in the shacks. We have, as you were saying off the top, we do have 22 in the U.S. now, and 21 of those are true traditional, what we would call our shacks. Some of them are 600 square feet, and we might have our largest one being 1,500 square feet, which is one in Back Bay in Boston, a little bigger. Then we do have our flagship restaurant here in Portland, Maine, where we have a buy station as well. So we have 4 fishermen that we land all their catch there, and this restaurant sits over 200 people. It's full service, so that's the only real outlier there. But our shacks they're really run like a traditional lobster shack. We have crab roll, lobster roll, shrimp roll. We have a couple soups on the menu. We might bring in some LTOs every now and then. And our seafood company supplies pretty much all the food that gets consumed in there. We're packaging up fresh meat. We're UPSing overnight or putting it on trucks if it's local enough to get product there. And then just working with Then we just work with a couple distributors for things like, buns and mayo and stuff like that.
Right. So are these company-owned shacks, or are you starting to explore the franchise model?
In the United States, we own and operate all of them. We staff them. We have GMs in every location. We have DOs that oversee, a handful. We have a COO Virginia, who's the captain of that ship, and then overseas.
Pun intended. I like it. We're keeping with the theme.
Yeah, exactly. And then overseas, they are licenses is how they work. So very similar to franchise. We're not operating those. We're not staying up all night and making sure that that things are being run the right way in Japan and Singapore. But what we do have is we have great partners there. And we do supply all their seafood, so we're completely in control of the quality and the sourcing of the proteins of the crab, shrimp, and lobster.
Well, it sounds like you're doing great in the retail space, and you've got this wholesale business. And from what I understand, you're like the Benihana Supplier of the Year. So you're crushing it with the third party restaurant space.
Well, I'd say when we started the seafood company portion of our business started in 2012. We just started simply to provide some fresh lobster meat to our restaurants because we were having a very hard time keeping the quality and consistency of what was showing up in our shacks. And that was when we only had 6. So we opened our own seafood processing company, seafood company here in in Saco, Maine, just down the road from Portland. And you fast forward to today, and it's an SQF level 3 facility. We have a great food safety culture there. We're processing anywhere from 25,000 to 40,000 pounds of lobster per day during the season.
Whoa.
And that's something that not a lot of people know about. Luke's, obviously, we have the storefronts, which is what is most customer facing. But the wholesale side is at this point a larger part of the dollars, just because you think about, we Luke's by itself, just looking at the shacks, is one of the largest, if not the largest, lobster meat end user in the country. And we only use lobster meat though in those shacks. So when we run a lobster through the processing facility, it could take 4 Maine lobsters to make one lobster roll. But every single lobster comes through has a tail. Every lobster has a body. Every lobster has legs. So there's a lot of other products that come out of that, and that all is being turned into, we're selling lobster tails, whether it's in our CPG or consumer packaged products. We're selling them just food service. And then we're using byproducts for things like soups and lobster cakes. And, we're really trying to utilize the whole animal.
Are you upcycling the shell? Is there anything that you can do with the shell?
Yeah. We dry the shell, and it can be used for, like fertilizer, and a few other things as well. But we kind of run a shell drying operation at the facility as well. Just to right now we're only moving out probably a container of waste every few days, so we've really limited that.
That's great. There's a lot with upcycling. I was just curious what other uses there would be. I mean, you've got this beautiful creature, and why not, use every bit of it if you can. Yeah,
and that plays into the B Corp certification as well. A healthy portion of that is environment and sustainability based. As we were talking earlier about a few of our large partners, the seafood world is kind of interesting, where it does work on whether the best word is sometimes paranoia, or whether it's just secrecy. People don't always like to talk about who their customers are. I've kind of worked in a different way with that. I have some really cool, on what I would call actual partnerships with a few of our larger accounts. And you mentioned one there, which is Benihana. We were named their Supplier of the Year in 2022. We supply every lobster tail that went through their restaurants the last couple of years. Just a really unique relationship we have with them, where we've worked together to kind of move out the what's going on with the market, what's someone willing to pay today, and we've really broken it down to what is the live cost, what's the cost to produce the product, and we kind of run a program that's based more off of it's completely based off the production cost of the product versus what someone's willing to pay on any given day. And this has been a really fun program where, as we talked about, a couple of those real peak times, like the best times to be processing lobster, whether it's, usually the month of June or in the heat of that main season, we just put up the majority of their inventory during that time. And it's worked great for us because we've got a guaranteed home for big volumes of lobster during that time, all lobster tails, and they know their guaranteed plate cost. And they don't got to ride that wave of saying, well, if we buy this in January, is the price going to be better? Is it going to be worse? It can be at a spot where it works for everybody. So that's a
great business strategy, Adam. It really is, because instead of trying to maximize every single dollar depending on the day and the market share, you've locked in a great long-term partner. Yeah, you may not make as much every single time, but the flip side of it is you smooth out your revenue curve now too.
Absolutely. And, we, as we were talking to, we look at our branded grocery business there, or as the more common term for it is, CPG. Those products that we've come out with, started in 2018, and it is the fastest growing segment of our business. And the thing we're probably focused on the most, in the last year or two. Having these really large partners that work with you on, on transparency and, just show them what things are costing to produce. You don't got to try to think everything. It also has allowed us to spend a lot more time building other segments of our business. So I think that's something that I appreciate an awful lot.
Well, if we go back a few years, you were the supplier of the year for Whole Foods. Are they still one of your partners? Are you still selling there?
Yeah. We've had a really fun ride with Whole Foods. They brought us on in at the end of 2018, and we did like a truckload of lobster to them. And it just quickly grew. Just really fantastic people to work with there. Easy, transparent. We have honest conversations. They come up and visit a few times. They've really helped grow our business. There's really no other way around that. Winning that was probably more shocking than anything else. That wasn't one we seen coming. I think just due to the sheer size and scope of Whole Foods and us just being a small family owned processor that we're still majority owned by a single family here with Luke and Luke, his brothers, and his dad. So
it's humbling, isn't it, when the big boys come down and want to partner with you?
Yeah, that was one. Looking on the sales side, I think we knew we'd be a very good partner for them. We thought we were doing the right things and values would align pretty well there. Whether it was from quality, whether it was from how we treat the animal, how we process it, kind of however you want to look at it. But I guess when I look back at getting into this business, I joined in 2016, and thinking ahead to seeing us, I guess it would have been 3 years later, we win the Global Supplier of the Year award for Whole Foods. That would have been a pretty good goal to have out of the gate, and not one that I had on the list. So something that I'm proud of, something that we're proud of as a company.
Well, given your background in sales, but at the same time, given the limited resources that you have with Lobsters, I imagine that's kind of a fine line about going out and trying to knock down more doors, activate more doors. It's not like you've got an endless supply. So I imagine you've got to put a lot of care into identifying the right partners, activating the right doors at the right, areas of the country too. So can you kind of talk us through a little bit about your philosophy of how you go out and try to attract new business?
I'm kind of old school in this sense. I still really believe in banging phones. We make a lot of phone calls here. I make a ton of cold calls still. I have a sales team now and a procurement team, but I like that aspect of it. I like competing. I like being in deals. I truly believe this. I'd rather be in 10 and win one than be in 2 and win one. I just like being in the mix. So I like that part of it. I think that the advantage to where we touch maybe call it 5 or 6 million pounds a year of lobster, and we process we process the majority of that. We move some live, but I think the real plus to that is that, not everyone's a fit for your business. And because you're not completely, you're not overwhelmed with the amount of lobster you're producing, especially with a few really good partners, like we mentioned with Benihana, Whole Foods. We work with a grocery store in the Midwest called Food Lion that moves some pretty big volumes for us as well, of lobster tails. You have an opportunity to be a little picky sometimes. There's always things like, we produce in a year a couple 100,000 pounds of frozen lobster bodies, raw frozen lobster bodies. That is not the sexiest product in the world. So we have some stuff like that stuff's got to move and you got to find ways to get that out the door. And it's not worth a lot either. But, when you come to your items like, lobster meat and lobster tails and products like that you do have a finite amount of, it's nice that, there's always somebody else is the truth. And if you're working with somebody that's super challenging or there's not a two-way street of respect, can just move on. You don't need them. They don't need you. And that's okay. And I've come to realize that over time, that if you don't got to win them all, you just gotta, I think you just want to win the right ones.
Well, it sounds like you like being at the plate. You want to take a few hacks in there and see if you can put something in play. I'm curious though, with the advent of cell phones, everyone working remote, very few people being like in the office at their desk with a desk phone. How are you finding the cold calling working?
It's interesting. You have, right. You'll go, you get out and make a couple calls and you'll talk to, a very structured call receptionist, answer the phone looking for this person, or we use other creative ways, of course, whether it's, LinkedIn or whether it's websites, whether it's referrals, you name it, you try to have, I think you try to use anything at your disposal because, there's, where there's also, there is a finite amount of lobster, but there's also a finite amount of these like real special customers that you want to work with. So you go from that really structured environment of making the cold calls and going through the steps that you would go through. Like, when I worked for Designs for Health, in the medical world, or when I worked my first job post university was working for Xerox, and that's just your typical cold call. And some of them here feel that way, but then you'll get the one where you call and, it's a business doing $8 million in sales and the owner answers the phone because that's how they've always done it. And, it's a real, and they love to talk about seafood, so there's a real variety of personalities and individuals you'll deal with when making cold calls in Lobster.
But are you actually able to get through to people? That's kind of what I was getting at, was that, a lot of times, a lot of these companies that another part of my business deals with, they'll make cold calls, they'll try to get in, and the calls seem to go nowhere. They don't get routed anywhere. That you get stuck in these automated systems that just don't take you to anybody.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of that is, it really is going back to a little bit of what, some people look at as an old school approach. I look at it as just a way to all you want to do is eventually get there and potentially create a new relationship. But a lot of these, even looking back on some of these accounts that we've brought on, like some of them have taken 30, 40 touches, right? So like the whole goal for me with my team, and this is, I'm not overly metric driven, but I do have it down to like, for the most part, I know how many calls it's going to take me to, get a meeting on the books, or how many calls it's going to take to turn that meeting into a sale. And I can look at, how many touches I've made or a rep's made on an account. And I can for the most part confidently say that, you got to make X amount more touches or X amount more different ways to get in there before you're probably going to get the right person to touch back. The caveat to that is that, as I talked about those other industries I worked in, people are a little more receptive. And I don't know if this would be consistent across food. I've listened to a few of your podcasts as well, and a lot of CEOs that aren't on the phone as much. But I think I do find it is it is how do I put this? It's different in a sense that someone is a little quicker to give a call back if they see an opportunity, or if they are if they're buying 20 different SKUs of seafood, say a seafood department at a grocery store, and you're one of 3 lobster companies that have called that actually produce it, and you're not the company that's buying it from the producer to try to sell to them. Sometimes like that's it is a bit of a privilege for I take that seriously. I think it is like that, talking about that two-way street of respect. Awesome for me to be selling our product to somebody who's the next person that touches is going to eat it. You know where your product's going, but it's also pretty cool that they can say that they're buying directly from the producer who's working directly with fishermen. So I think that there does give you a little bit of an advantage as well.
Yeah, that's a little bit of your differentiation. I think you've kind of honed in on that. But earlier you said sometimes it's taken 30 to 40 touches. That's incredible. That's a lot of It's a lot of phone calls, a lot of LinkedIn messages. That's I think you like the physical aspect of it. You mentioned you played hockey. You probably like the physical side of getting on the phone and talking to people. It does have a different feel, different vibe. You get a different energy, when you're doing that versus just the email.
We all get cold emails. What do you do with them mostly, right? Like I respond very, very few. And but if I get sometimes I get a cold call, I'm willing to give it the time of day, as long as the first line is, I'm not trying to sell you anything, because, I don't think that's the best way to start off a call is to tell a fib. And it's okay to be selling something, that's kind of how the world turns,
Wait, so you said if someone calls you and says they want to talk to you, but they're not trying to sell you something, you call BS on that?
Absolutely. There's no,
why would they be calling?
I don't know why you're in sales if you're not going to be proud of. It's either that's not the company you should be with, that's not the product you should be selling, or you shouldn't be selling. Because I did hear this was back in May. This is a while ago, but I heard a quote that nothing happens until someone sells something, and I think that is pretty true in the business world.
That's like a disqualifier for you automatically if they're not being honest or genuine.
Oh yeah, and with our team here, whether it's that going back to the transparency of how we produce, what we produce, why we have these certifications, whatever it's going to be about our business, why we do things the way we do them. Same thing where our team, I wouldn't want anyone telling someone that they're not trying to sell something, because it's exactly what we're trying to do. And I think it's okay as well if you have 5 or 6 conversations with somebody, several meetings with them, and they haven't purchased from you. It's okay to ask them for that sale, right? How come you haven't bought anything from us yet? We talk all the time, and it's it still is business at the end of the day, and it's nice to have. You want to have these relationships. Like I have some very close friends in this industry who are customers of mine now. I value those a ton. There's a guy from a pretty large, I would call it like a broker, distributor work with. Good friend of mine, probably at my wedding, when I get married, and that's really cool to me. But also, I don't want friends. I also want, we want partners, we want customers. So it's okay to push for that.
I love that you said, "Hey, we've been talking for 5-6 months. We've had 10 conversations. Why haven't you bought from us?" I imagine some of your salespeople maybe that makes them uncomfortable to be that direct.
Yeah, and I'm probably I'm super respectful of. I love the sales team I have right now. These guys, this team works very hard. They make a lot of calls. They'll do, if we miss a pickup, they'll go pick something up at 6 a.m. They're all in, and I really appreciate that. But going back to what you're just asking, I think it can be a difficult conversation. But I think my expectation is that the person you're speaking to, I think they expect that you're trying to sell them products. And that's I don't think you have to completely beat around that. Their role is they're in a procurement role and you're in a selling role, and that's okay. And I've said that before, that you have someone on your team who's been working with someone for a very long time, and I'm not too shy to say too, that's not a opportunity anymore. That's just a friend. That's just that's someone that you talk to that doesn't buy anything. So you can. That's
a relationship. It's not a sales relationship.
You can almost expend your time outside of work on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other point is, if you are that upfront and that transparent about, hey, why haven't you bought? I think you're going to get some good information out of that. You should hear something that should either help you refine what you're selling. Basically, you got to get down to the no. You got to get down to why they're not. Why is it a no?
Yeah. And you said a good point too. Oftentimes, if you can just get in the mode of, and I was very much pitch first at some points in my career, especially where you work at Xerox, you go through their sales training, which is very structured and was very helpful to me to an extent, but they have talk tracks and things like that. Right. And and do we hear, I love doing things with the team here. Like we bounce around ideas on, here's the 8 objections I hear all the time, and part of the game is bouncing objections. It's true. Like, you do need to turn that objection into an opportunity. And if you move past all those, you should be at a point where you get a sale.
Or you qualify them that they're not going to be, they're not. And yeah.
And I think oftentimes, I've found whether it's in life or whether it's in sales or in business, if you ask the right questions and you ask enough questions, and, truth is too, like I like learning about people. I like, especially from different areas, we're so fortunate to work with people all over this country that work with, all over the world, that work with casinos and cruise lines and you name it, really cool. And oftentimes if you ask enough questions and you just listen, people just tell you what they want. Right. And that's a lot easier way to navigate, what can be an intimidating thing to be doing, which is making a lot of cold calls to, or making just calls in general to people that probably necessarily don't love, it happening all the time. Exactly. So I just find it's an easier way to navigate through it, So I've tried to, I found that's been successful for me, at least.
I do think, though, that being in the food and beverage space, at least you do have one thing going for you, and that's you've got these delicious samples. And you can say whatever you want to say, but hey, I'm going to back it up, try our samples. Now, I know they get samples, but I mean, if you truly have a better product, that obviously shines through. So I think that at the end of the day, that is also an ace in the hole.
Yeah, I think it worked both ways, right? You could have the best relationship managers, best salespeople you're ever going to have. If your product stinks, it's not going to be sustainable.
You're nowhere.
Either. Yeah, exactly.
Yep,
so
you're nowhere. It's not sustainable. All right. So you said you're in 10 states. So what's the best way for people to go out and find you guys? Let's say find a shack and then maybe find you in retail so they can try some of this lobster tail or lobster meat.
Yeah. So start with retail. We're nationally in Whole Foods. And on our website on lukeslobster.com, if you go on there, we have a list of every grocery store we're in the United States, where we have a where you can find us page. Not every, like we do have right now, we have like a lobster mac and cheese. We have a lobster bisque. We have lobster cakes, just the meat, a split tail. We have a lot of the grocery products. Not every store we're in obviously carries the whole line, but we can be found in an awful lot of different lines, or different brands. A couple recently that we've been fortunate enough to get into their doors are Big Y, which is in in the Connecticut, Massachusetts area. And we just, this is a cool one. We just got into Coburn's, which is in the Midwest. So that's a new one and a new area for us as well. They took on 3 of our SKUs. Same thing for the shacks. If you go to on the website, we have a list of the addresses for all our shacks in the major cities we're in around the U.S. And then we also have an online market that you can order B2C. You can order a lobster roll kit directly to your door, and a plethora of other products.
Well, I'm hoping you guys have something in North Carolina because I'm very hungry right now.
You might have to. That is an area we've looked. We've looked, and that might be one that they might get in the online market. But
that's probably the DTC there for that. Yeah, that's what I expected.
I can probably hook you up, Tony.
You know somebody. I know somebody who knows
somebody now. Yeah,
I like it. Well, listen, I am so glad we finally got to connect. It sounds like the sky's the limit for you guys. I mean, you're knocking down retailers. Your shacks are doing great. There's probably more questions I'd ask about the shacks, but I think we've probably run out of time. We'll have to have you back on sometime. We'll have a live stream and we'll do we'll have a lobster roll together and a beer.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome, and it would be very fitting because you and me probably ended up talking more than most people that have come on the show because we were chasing each other down for a couple of years. So
exactly, I had to get all I could. I wasn't just going to cut this one short. I mean, it took me 2 years to get you, so I was going to pepper you with a lot of questions. Adam, great talking to you. I'm so glad you were able to expose more people to Luke's Lobster today, and yeah, stand by. We're going to do a live stream in about a month or so, and we'll continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate the listeners who tune in. We'll make sure to get this out on our social channels.
Awesome. We'll talk to you soon, Adam.
Thank you.